because he said to me after, he said, Daisy has been cooking all afternoon. Casey has been cooking all afternoon.
So what could you do? And you on a diet?
Yes, but I had salad.
Very good.
I am towing the line. And I have lost 12. I'm going for 13 more. If I feel that's too light, I'll put on 5 and just get it perfectly where I am.
Get your boyish figure, yeah.
There you go.
Do they get the Sox and the Bruins on cable? Are there? Or you just?
Certainly get it in the Maritimes on cable. Yeah, you sure do. And but I live in Toronto, and it's Blue Jays territory. Blue Jays, Blue Jays, Blue Jays. In fact, I believe they're covering most of the TSN in Canada, which is the equivalent to ESPN here. Carries virtual. I think 80 games this year.
Does the T stand for Trans-Canada? TSN?
The sports
no.
Oh, these
probably the, yeah.
Or Telemedia. Telemedia
be.
Sports Network, I believe. Telemedia Sports Network. Which is... Okay.
It's really nice to welcome John Allan Cameron to Boston Cable.
Thank you very much. It's indeed a delight, Marcia. We go back many, many years.
More years than we want to admit to. It's 1964.
Yeah, 64, 65.
We were just children then, of course.
Just
right?
children, just veritable babies. And a lot of...
Well, that's the year you started performing.
That's right. That was the year I started performing. In fact, it was on the 12th of July, 1964, at the Glendale Festival. Father John Angus had the wonderful Fiddle Festival at Glendale. And CJFX Radio with Gus McKinnon just happened to be making a radio tape, and I got up. I decided to, at that time, basically I wasn't singing very much. It was instrumental stuff. So I played Mar Castle. They taped it.
Beautiful air.
Yeah, lovely air. And they taped it. And the next morning, that was on a Sunday afternoon, the next morning Gus McKinnon played it on the air. And in the first hour he had 30 calls saying, who is this? What is happening? What's going on here? And he phoned me and said, I think we got a bit of a hit. And I said, well, keep playing it. And we established a relationship, and later on that fall, when I attended St. Francis Xavier University, I ended up staying at the radio station.
You had a little apartment upstairs over.
We call it the Cabino. Yeah. It was Gus referred to it lovingly as the Cabino, and
the Cameron Cabino.
That's right. And Gus and I, after that, used to go on the air between 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and it would run over to class for an 8:10 class, and but I had 2 hours every morning speaking to all the people of Inverness and Antigonish counties and PEI. I didn't realize the far-reaching effect because it went over to Surrey and quite a bit in PEI and to the Codroy Valley in Newfoundland. It had a wonderful signal, and people got to know me. And I was so surprised, even a year later, being invited to perform in St. Peter's, Prince Edward Island. And I went in there, and the place was jammed. I said, oh gosh, nobody knows me here. And I just didn't realize the power of radio.
Power of the media, right.
Power of the media, absolutely. And it started from that, and people got to know Gus. And there's a certain wonderful thing about doing radio, in that the audience creates in their own mind a picture of who these two characters are. And Gus and I...
Usually much more flattering than the actuality.
Absolutely, absolutely. But in our case, no. We're the exception.
Right.
And Gus and I used to travel around to different festivals, and would stop in places for coffee and in little restaurants, and the people there would be talking about what we were talking about that very morning, whether it be politics, whether it be whatever was happening. And
Just like John Gazowski now. Peter Gazowski.
Peter Zowski.
Zowski, yeah,
Yes.
I cannot pronounce that right.
Peter Zowski.
I think you have to be Canadian.
GZ or GZ.
I know,
OWSKI.
That's why I try to put a G sound in it.
Yeah.
It starts with a G.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy and a wonderful interviewer.
What did you do on radio? Recreate like a typical morning.
Okay. It wasn't a tight format at all. You basically went in. It was probably the easiest going radio station in the world where I mean, if you go to a radio station in Toronto, you need to establish meetings 2 weeks in advance in order to get to see anybody. And unless you have, if you're a quasi credible entity, they won't even give you the time of day. But in Antigonish it was more free flowing, and we mixed up it was a joyous mix. I mean, you would hear maybe a Johnny Mathis tune.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, occasionally they would do. Well, Bruce Rayfuse was good at that, and Matovani. I mean, the radio played that stuff, but in the morning generally it was Celtic music, fiddle music. He written fiddle music and country, and I was the first guy. There was a single came into the CJFX radio, and it was by a young singer by the name of Glenn Campbell, and it was called "Try a Little Kindness." I said I really like this song, so we started playing the heck out of that. And it probably gave them a boost in Eastern Canada.
CJFX is so important to the people of Inverness County.
Absolutely.
Because they can't get the Sydney radio stations.
That's
on
right.
the other side. They can only get Antigonish from the mainland.
That's right.
I have friends there who lived out in the woods. They didn't have any power in their houses.
Right.
But by God, they had a battery radio.
Yes.
So they could pick up CJFX in the morning.
Yeah.
And little tape recorders, they could tape a tune they liked, so they could learn it.
Yeah. Oh, that happens all the time. I remember
The
when...
necessities of life
yeah.
ran on batteries.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember the old battery radio and CGFX radio. There was the general manager of the station was just a wonderful man by the name of J. Clyde Nunn, who later on went into a very successful political life for the Liberals, by the way. Sorry about that, conservatives. But he did go in for the Liberals, and he was quite a wonderful man, and he was very humane about. He ran his show called Fun at 5 ran from 5 until 6 o'clock at night, and he is the only man I know who could make commercials so captivating. The audiences listened to him totally because. Granted, there was not that much competition, but he would take McKenna's drugstore in Antigonish and this and that, and talk about the folks that ran the place and made it very homey. And he would maybe some days play 2 songs, at the most 3 songs. The rest was talking about all the wonderful people around who advertised on the radio.
They ate it up and they hung.
They loved it. They loved it.
By the way, remember you had a band when you were a student at St. FX?
Yeah.
You know what happened to some of those fellas?
Yes, I sure do.
They're now Schooner Fare.
That's right.
Oh, really?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Chuck Romanoff. We went to university together, and they were formed a group called the Cavaliers, and there was a few times. You see, at that I put myself through university, and I was paying a few bills here and there, and the best way to make a few dollars was to hitchhike over to Craigness to play the guitar for Buddy McMaster, and then we decided to get together and say, well, gosh, we have this certain talent. Why don't we go out and do a few concerts? And the radio station totally backed us up. And in fact, we used to go in.
And they plugged it.
And they plugged it, and we would go in there and make some tapes. In fact, Gus McKinnon has some of these tapes, and I don't have any copies of them. I'd love to get them. And they would
He's
advertise.
holding them over your head, is he?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, technically it wasn't that great, but it put everything across quite well, and it was a lot of fun. And we went all over the place, and we made some money, and and that was neat. I mean, Stevie Goodman once told me, he said, "John Allan, we are the luckiest people in the world. We are doing what we love, and we have the bonus of being paid for it." And that's neat.
What kind of songs were you doing?
Mainly it was the influence of the Clancy brothers at that time and Tommy Makem. Used to do a song that was quite popular, and they started playing my version all the time. They didn't play the Clancy brothers version, "The Juice of the Barley." That became very, very popular.
Well, John Allan would often edit in some local references. He'd take a place name in Ireland, take
For
that
example,
out, throw in something from
yeah,
Inverness County.
yeah, the old
It would
woman
go well.
from Wexford became the old woman from Mabu. And I mean, that is an integral part of oral tradition.
Unfortunately.
Purists would say
Yeah.
it is not the pristine purity. The song wasn't ordained to be this. I say balderdash. That's oral tradition.
Like now.
I studied it and I localized it. If you want to say the old woman from Wexford, go right ahead. Everybody knows it was based on that.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at quite a few songs that we know. The New Christy Minstrels had a song out called Denver, da 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 da, based on Ross and the Bow. Bobby Bear had a song out called Come Kiss Me Love, a big hit, and it was based on a lovely Scottish song called Peggy Gordon.
And so you dug out the original and had a big hit with it.
Absolutely. And then it was very interesting, a little later on, I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I must give probably the biggest song I had at that time when I was first starting and I just graduated from university. I was about to make my first record. I was passing through Boston and I went to see my friends in Arlington, Marjorie and Herbie McLeod, and Marjorie was just a great lady, and she said, "You're going to make a record. Did you ever hear this song?" And she played an obscure version of a song called The Four Marys, and I said, I really love it.
Mary Hamilton.
Yeah. And then we took the words down, and I went on to Montreal, and I recorded it, and it became virtually the national anthem down there. Everybody did it, and it treated me very, very well. And when the song was around for 500 years, and it was, I don't know, that was over 25 years ago, and I still do it, and people respond.
You've had some good luck with your sidemen over the years.
Oh, terrific. In fact, I was once
One
referred
of them
to...
grew up to be Alistair McGilvery, wrote the song for the Myra.
Absolutely. Alistair McGilvery was just a total delight and a wonderful singer-songwriter, and I recognized that talent right away. In fact, I remember...
I'll never forget. You took me into the office at the Harpenbard and you said, sit down and listen to this young man.
Yeah.
Someday his name will be known.
Yeah.
And you had Alistair McGilvery sing to me. That was the first time that I ever met him. And I was impressed.
Yeah.
And you were right.
Yeah.
And time has proven you to be right.
Well, I remember there was a gentleman by the name of Tam Kearney, who is the leader of Friends of Fiddler's Green in Toronto, and they done Mariposa folk festivals and all that stuff, referred to me as the Ronnie Hawkins of folk music, because Ronnie Hawkins developed quite a few players like Robbie Robertson and all of these people, and the band, which were sensational. The band. I mean, Ronnie Hawkins created those and gave them employment, and when nobody else would listen.
Very talented man himself.
Very, very much so, and it's still going very strong and doing very well. In fact, there's a brand new book that Peter Goddard of the Toronto Star wrote about Ronnie, and it's rather interesting. In any case, over the years I had David Eisner was my first bass player, and one of the most interesting experiences we had as a trio with Alistair and myself and David was we played at the Horseshoe Tavern in Toronto on Queen Street, which was the mecca of country music in Canada. And I mean, Loretta Lynn used to play there at that time, and all, you know, Conway Twitty and all of these people. In fact, I remember the gentleman who led the house band, Ron McDonald, was, and Jerry Hall were saying it, and Mickey Andrews were in the house band. They were called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I guess it was based on Clint's, I don't know.
Never mind.
But in any case, they said to me they really liked the way I was entertaining people, and I was so surprised. I had 400 Maritimers lining up around the block
Mhm.
to come in to see this guy wearing a kilt, and what have you, and he said to me, he compared me to another singer who came in there. He said, but this other singer is really, really great, but he never has any more than 25 people, and it was Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson used to get 25 people on a Saturday night at the Horseshoe, and he said, boy, does he ever deserve attention. Of course, it took Willie 25 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And
Had to
but
grow
that
his hair long.
that's right, and become a bit of a quasi-rebel. I don't know. But anyway, Jack Starr, who managed the Horseshoe Tavern, called up some of his friends in Nashville, and he said, this particular guy deserves to be on the Grand Ole Opry, and they respected him so
Meaning
much.
you.
Me,
Meaning you, yeah.
moi. He said, there's this guy up here, and we'd like to get him on the Opry, and they took Jack's word because he was dealing with all the big acts from Nashville. So I went down there, drove down with Alistair McGilvery and David Eisner, and here we are backstage at the old Ryman Auditorium, the old, it was...
The sacred shrine.
Yeah, and at that time, just across the street, at that time, David Allan Coe was driving an old hearse, and he was sitting on top of the hearse playing his guitar as the people were filing in to hear the Opry. But I mean, you have to start somewhere, and that was his way. So anyway, I noticed, I'll never forget this, Ernie Ashworth, God bless him. Ernie Ashworth had a big country hit out called Talk Back Trembling Lips, and he came out with this absolutely gorgeous cream-colored suit with red lips all over it. Talk back written here, trembling lips. His hit was written all over his body, suit. And I said, well, if he has enough intestinal fortitude to wear that, I'm going to wear my kilt. So I came out in my kilt, and I was sandwiched in between Roy Rogers and Hank Snow. Here we have the epitome of comic book greatness and the epitome of traditional country. I mean, I'm sandwiched in there, and I'm wearing a kilt. And then Roy Acuff introduced me, and he's the king down there. And I started up. We're supposed to do 2.5 minutes. I said 2.5 minutes, everybody. And so I said, no exceptions. I said, listen, guys, in order for me to really gain something here, I must. I'll have to. Maybe it'd be best to do a medley. So I went in there and I started with a bagpipe tune. I think it was Kitchener's Army March, just to give them a taste of the bagpipes on the 12-string guitar, with Alistair and David, and one of the Nashville drummers just moved in there and started playing. And I immediately went from that into the country up-tempo song called Anne, which was recorded by Glenn Campbell and written by Billy Ed Wheeler, incidentally. I like to give credit to songwriters. They're the unsung heroes of the industry. In any case, I finished that, and I couldn't believe the response from the 3,500 people in the theater. They went absolutely nuts. So Roy Acuff, in the middle of my song Anne, he came out with his chair and he sat in front of me, and he was looking up at me. He said, who is this, more or less? And then he said to me, young man, do another. And I said, sir, I was told to do just one tune. And he said, do another, I'm telling you. So I did another song, and then he came out, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he did a 7-minute interview and that was on live WSM radio, which was all over the country. Well, it reached, it was a clear channel. And that particular thing gave me so much wonderful confidence, because you were certainly were not singing to the converted, because when you perform and the audience out there have absolutely no idea who you are, and you become a credible entity, then as Hank Snow came up to me, he said, whatever you're doing, boy, he said, keep doing it because it works. And that night we were Alistair and David Eisner and I, we slept in the car out in the field in the park in Nashville somewhere, because we didn't have any money to go to a hotel. Here we had a great evening, and all of that stuff and we slept in the car, and we had $5 for breakfast. I think breakfast was 89 cents for bacon and eggs the next morning, and we'll save that for that, and we headed for Canada.
Wow.
Stopped in to see my old buddy Johnny Archie McDonald in Detroit, who was a cop there, whose daughter Barbara is a fine piano player. And anyway, they fed us very well. We finally got home. But that was quite a wonderful experience. But it was the type of injection that a person needs. So, I mean, it more or less told me, and I had believed it for a long time, you don't have to be apologetic about any expression of your music. Some people are better able to express it than others, but hey, if you deliver from the heart, and you deliver with confidence, with your feet on the ground, you're going to make believers out of an awful lot of people.
That's what's so nice about this friendship routine on the Scotia Prince.
Absolutely.
Bringing in the traditional musicians, 90-year-old Rufus Ginchard.
Yeah.
And these frightening teenage fiddle phenoms.
And the dancers.
Cross from Newfoundland.
Those dancers.
They're not doing anything different. They're not, fancying it up for the tourists. They don't have to.
They don't have to. The music
Great.
stands for itself. It has this pristine purity that has lived for centuries, and it will continue to live for centuries. And the nice thing now is that more people are finding out about it. As I said in my introduction the other day, or in one of my comments, I make comments sometimes that just come off the wall. I said, it's really nice that some young people like Paul McDonald and Natalie McMaster are playing this type of stuff rather than what goes on with Guns N' Roses and that stuff, which I can't particularly see.
As long as we have kids taking up the fiddle.
Oh yeah,
We'll be all right.
There's no problem about that. There was a bit of a scare a few years ago, but that's well taken care of, and I'm happy. I think it was in on the ground floor of its revival, and
you've done a lot to help the youngsters come along.
Well, that's rather important. When I had later on in the mid-70s, I had a national television show which included Jerry Holland, Winston Scotty Fitzgerald, Angus Chisholm, and my brother John Donald, and Wilfred Gillis, and that's nice. And I had Ukrainian dance groups. I had French-Canadian dance groups, and I had Acadian dance groups, and as guests, and that's important because we all should be proud of our heritage and just perform from there.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I feel like there's applause.
Yeah. Did I talk too much? No, it's great.
You are going into politics, aren't you?
No.
John, do you have any
Stories?
albums in the works? Are we going to get anything new?
Well, yes. What I want to do, first of all, I want to do a live album. I could do a live album, with the accompaniment of the Rankins and what have you, because it really works. I mean, what we do really, really works. And, to redo things like the Four Marys and that stuff, because that stuff has never been available on cassette before. And
CD, you've got to go CD.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cassette and CD, that's what I'm going to go. And I'm also going to do a Celtic guitar album, because people have been asking for that for
You've
years.
been threatening to do that for decades.
Yeah.
It's about the time you got on with
the
it.
thing is, I was supposed to do one this April, and management said, why don't we get a live one done first? And I said, all right, because I mean, I'm the chieftain of.
It's been at least 20 years you've been threatening to make that guitar album.
Yeah, but I haven't lost anything.
No, you haven't.
Oh, I love it. In fact, I got a whole bunch of tunes. I'm keeping some tunes
Okay.
here, going into the
well,
books.
as long as they get right here,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for your attention and covering all of this stuff, and for all you've done over the years.
It's been a trip.
I mean, you were responsible for me and my 12-string guitar. Sure have, my Martin.